In the film, I play Mamie Till, and Mamie Till was the progenitor of the civil rights movement. She made a significant choice for the Black community of 1955 in America. And she made a significant choice for the greater American and global community by having an open casket wake for her son, who was tragically killed, Emmett Till. That choice was significant in that it forced America, it forced the world to witness what was happening to Black people in the South at this time. It forced people to consider their history, to consider Southern history, to consider um, um, the manner in which Black people had been treated. And she did so in the midst of a substantial amount of terror before she even made the choice to move to travel rather from Chicago to Mississippi to witness the trial. And so she was a deeply, deeply brilliant and brave woman who challenged America and who challenged the world in the way they see Black people and the way that Black people were that were treated at this time. Initial conversations with Chinoya were surrounded around what it meant to be a Black mother in general, because it's such a weight to take on this kind of an experience. This is a historical moment that changed the trajectory for so many people. It is why Rosa Parks, talks about she did what she did. This is why this is Dr. King remembering. This is James Baldwin remembering. Everybody put themselves in the place of, or the potential of the place of Emmett, because they saw that could happen to them. And so our conversation was about what it means to be a Black mother, and 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 the wailing that experience would bring. What does it mean to shoulder that weight? What does it mean to be strong? Right. So that's all of the initial, the surface experience, right? And what does it mean to show the humanity of someone with so much of a symbolism, a public figure status? We talked about those two things because it's important to show the public and the private nature of who Mamie Till was in making the choices that she did, and in living the life that she did before and thereafter the experience. It's important to tell the story of Emmett Till through these difficult family discussions and challenges, because we have to understand that it's not easy coming to these choices, to understand that there is an inner turmoil, an inner tension that Mamie was experiencing, that any person who has to undergo such a difficulty has to deal with. And so it's also just important to understand her humanity. She didn't come to these decisions lightly. She had to consider, and someone who is coming unto their own independence. She had a reliance upon her mother. She had a difficulty with, her family dynamic with her father. And so having this conversation with these two people, and with her love at the time, who would eventually become her husband, Gene Mobley, like having a full 360-degree perspective on how someone makes the choices that they do, to show that is a bold, brave thing. That is the significance of coming into those private qualities of her life, so that we can get a deep dive on the true nature of her humanity. Chinoya it's a submergence in all things of the film, in all things of who you are, tasked with portraying. We just did everything as detailed as we possibly could. And we're always open and available to each other. We sought out every beat. We sought out as much information as we could, painting the picture of the environment of Mississippi, painting the picture of the environment of Chicago, painting the picture of what does it mean to be in the kind of, maternal and fraternal sibling relationship of Mamie and Emmett. We wanted a full understanding of who she was, and in order to do that, we just went deep under and stayed there for a long time. And so that's what it's like to work with Shinoya. I think everyone came extremely devoted. And that's, there's a weight, there's a solitary weight that has to happen in any kind of role, but especially with this kind, because she did feel such an aloneness, right? And yet everyone in her community that she already knew and was bringing spiritually from Chicago down into Mississippi, those people who she began to know, who were there intentionally for her, who deeply, deeply honored and respected the choices that she made for her own healing and for her community, the global community, the American community, the Black community's healing. They surrounded her with a kind of love. Oh, Jalen embodied Emmett from the beginning, right? From the first read with him that I encountered with him, because he's just charismatic. And the first thing he says, I just got to say, Miss Danielle, you have a beautiful smile. And I'm like, excuse me? And and that kind of, that kind of lightness, that kind of, I just feel good in the world and in my spirit and in my body is the kind of thing that Emmett embodied, right? It's somebody who Mamie brought up to be his full self at all times. And I think Jalen's mother did the same thing with him, and that's communicated. And you just naturally and automatically saw that was who he was. So that spirit of playfulness, that spirit of charisma and full bodied, Black joy, to have people feel the humanity, to feel a kind of intimacy, to feel a kind of awareness that they didn't have before. And hopefully that does what Mamie Till wanted it to do, to continue to inform, to educate, to enlighten, to embolden people to fight for and to snatch their knowledge, to their history, because it's imperative that they do so, and that Emmett's legacy persists. That's all she wanted. She wanted a film so that people would know that, so that she wouldn't have to bear it alone. Because going out on the road at that time and letting people know her experience and telling people about Emmett, it was therapeutic for her. And I think it will be a kind of continuance of the therapy, and a therapy for me, and everybody who's a part of this film, to know that the work continues and it does what she sought for it to do.
The historical significance of this movie is like none other. It is the spark, it is the start of change in our community, thanks to Mamie Till and thanks to her inspiration from her son and her love for her son that led her down this path of revolution. The story follows a boy, a young Black boy, and his mother in the city of Chicago. You see the love that they have and the sort of connection that they have, and he wants to visit his cousins and have a good time, just go on vacation. All he wanted to do was go on vacation, but unfortunately the place that he was vacationing wasn't so inviting. He gets into, not an altercation, but a situation while on his vacation that leads to him getting in trouble. And whether it have been, something that he should have done but only did out of the purest and kindest out of his heart, he was punished in a way that was terrible and unjust, but it happened. And it sparked a fire in his mother that kept burning and burning, and she went out and she made a change in honor of her son. Shinoya is the best. She is so warm in a sense of she always made sure that we were right in the right headspace, and she always made sure that we were ready and knew the full weight of this scene or of this line or the backstory of it. And she was just so insightful in the way that she was always there for me when I needed her. She was always there to give extra information or an extra helping hand. And she is one of the best directors that I've ever worked with. Danielle, also a beautiful person, also a beautiful spirit, and an even more beautiful actor. She is so great in everything that she does, whether it being a greeting in the morning or a hug or saying lines or portraying one of the most historical and greatest figures in history that not a lot of people talk about. So I can just say that she's amazing. She brought the motherly love and the feeling of a mother, with her being a mother herself. She brought that, because now a lot of mothers will look at this film and see themselves in Mamie, and it will change them, hopefully for the better. So I can definitely say that she brought that authenticity, that love, that nurturing sense that a mother feels naturally on a daily basis. And she showed power. She brought strength, and she brought unity. She brought pride into the journey that you can see her making change in honor of her son, in honor of the entire community, in hopes of a better world. And she brought all of that to this role. I can definitely say that I felt nothing but honor going into this. There was no nervousness. There was no pressure. There was no doubt. There was never any doubt that I wouldn't portray him as the person that he was. It was only a need to make it as authentic and as real, and the humanization of Emmett Till. So I can definitely say that all those things mixed together were my main focus in getting this project out there and getting Emmett out there. The most rewarding was it wasn't during the film, actually. It was seeing the film, because you can only pray and know that this project, or any project for that matter, will come out looking as pure and authentic and great as you want it to. So after the film was done, and seeing it and connecting with it and loving these characters and understanding their story, understanding their motivation, that was the most rewarding part. History is something that built the foundation of where we are today. And a lot of that history is now not being taught or not now being shown as much and as often as it should. So for it to be able to make theaters and make screens for the younger generation to see and still learn is something that is so important to us now and the generations to come.
It's been a long, hard-fought process trying to get this movie made. People would say, well, everybody knows the story. We'd say, no, everybody doesn't know the story. They'd say, well, there's nobody in Europe's gonna go see this. And I always say, well, all of my movies are very popular in Europe, so I know people go see movies with black people in them. What is the problem? And people were afraid, I guess. And then when everything went down with George Floyd and the entire nation got up and said, you know what, this is really starting to agitate us and we don't like it. People started to say, let's tell some black stories. And we were like, hey, we have a story for you. And fortunately for us, they allowed us to make it the way we wanted to make it. And when a studio steps back and says, do your thing, all you can do is say, thank you so much, because the outcome is magnificent. It's a beautifully made film. The actors are great. The experience was great, and no one can say that they don't know why we made it. Given the country we're living in, when stories are disappearing from history books, I am Emmett's grandmother. which is a role I'm very used to playing. And she is the mother of Mamie, who says to Mamie, you know, you have to let him go be him. You have to let him go down south and see his family. And that's something that she felt very responsible about, because she felt if she hadn't said, listen, let him go, that it wouldn't have happened. But you know, I like to feel that her heart was in the right place, you know, and I hope that she didn't torture herself too much about this, because yes, she said, as we all would have said, listen, let him go see his family. Who anticipates this? No one. It's a generational story. And I feel about my daughter the way she feels about her son. And so my worries are her worries, you know, and you have to understand, you know, parenting is not easy. You know, it is one of the toughest jobs in the world, because it's like you're living on loose boards. You know, you make a step this way and then this happens, and you weren't anticipating this because you were thinking that was going to happen. So it's really about trying to do your best. And that's all everybody in the film really tries to do. You know, whether it's Mamie talking to Emmett and trying to instill in him what he needs to do, be small, whether it's me talking to her saying, well, who's looking out for you? You know, and the families down south who say, you know, I didn't have a choice. You know, I had to do what I had to do. Parenting is not easy. So that's why I think it's important the way it's flowing in the film. Danielle, I can't even describe her perfection. She is just sublime. Her performance is sublime. You know, it's as good as anything I've ever seen, ever. I mean, she's magnificent. Well, I mean, we got her through her rewriting of the script as she needed it to be with Keith, and sort of mixing that all together until everyone was confident in what we had. And once everyone was confident in what we had, we did what every movie does. We crossed our fingers and hoped for the best, and got beyond platinum. You know, it's beyond platinum. It's a wonder. It's a great film. There's no other way for me to explain it. There's love, there's humor, there's angst, there's agitation, there's horror, there's all of these things that appear in life in this little film about a mother and son. He understood that he could not bring the 2021 Jalen. He had to bring Emmett, and he stepped up to the plate, he swung, and he connected. I mean, his performance also is beautiful, and that smile makes you wish that you had known Emmett. You know, makes you think, oh, maybe I would have tried to protect him. We know in those days lots of things would have happened, but you feel like you wanted to know him. You know, it was an interesting experience down to 1955, you know, and still be able to step out of it when you need to, because it can become suffocating being in the past that way, because everyone was there. Do you know what I mean? Everyone was present in their roles. So people had to like take a breath. I had to cut up, because I can't be quiet when it's that heavy. It's too much for me. So I made noise, I made jokes, you know.
When I was approached by the producers 3 years ago about making this film, I told them that the only way that I was interested in telling the story was through Mamie's emotional point of view and perspective, her journey in the film. For without Mamie, the world wouldn't know who Emmett Till was. And so that was a non-negotiable for me, and a decision I made that the producers were 100% supportive of and really encouraged me to lean into. Well, I think about my lived reality as a Black woman in this world, particularly someone who grew up in America. And I think that, for me, my joy is a form of resistance. And even in spite of, or even in the midst of, the inherent pain and trauma and anger and frustration that can come with being a Black woman in the world, there's also a lot of joy and love and community and life in my living, in my being. And so I knew that my lived experience and the experience of so many other people who are part of marginalized communities, it's an experience in which all of that can exist alongside each other. So I knew that it was important that we begin and end the story in joy, that we make sure that we see those moments of community and love and life and laughter and lightness, because that's also can exist alongside the pain and the sadness. So making sure that there's that balance was critical. And also knowing that this is a story that's essentially kind of a character study of Mamie and her evolution of activist consciousness, that doesn't require showing the physical violence inflicted upon Emmett, because that's not the crucial to her story, And so that also helped inform my decisions about the balance and what to show and what not to show. Danielle Deadwyler is a revelation in this film. Her performance is a breathtaking channeling of who Mamie was. She communicates so much with her eyes. Danielle Deadwyler can hold a screen. She tells such complex emotions and humanities and subtext just without saying a word. And so all of that she brings to this incredible performance, and she literally gives her whole mind, body, and spirit to every take. And so every take was incredible. And so my editor and I had a field day in post. Well, Danielle and I spent a few months before shooting going through every emotional beat and nuance in the script multiple times. And then she also dived deeply into research as well. And so we were in constant communication about the research that she was learning. And so by the time she got on set, she had such an inherent emotional and psychological understanding of who Mamie was. And then with the other actors, I had a bit of a truncated version of that. And so I was making sure that everybody that I had conversations with everyone to unpack what was going on underneath and in between the words, that they not only had an understanding of who the person was that they were playing in a historical sense, but they understood the kind of the emotional beats within the script that helped make them human, and by them understanding the emotional psychology underneath the words and actions, it really helped ground their performance, that helped take these incredible people off of the historical pedestal that we placed them on and made them human. Whoopi is incredible as a producer, as an actor. I mean, from the first moment I met her, she was so supportive of my artistic vision and point of view. And she had such an unwavering belief in my artistry. It was inspiring, and I rarely have felt more seen as a human being, as an artist, and as a Black woman than working with Whoopi Goldberg as a producer. And as an actor, she was so humble and gracious and open and receptive to my directing. And in between takes, she was funny as hell. So it was quite a few things. One, I knew that I really wanted a bright palette. In terms of costume design, in terms of production design, in terms of the lighting, the mise en scène. I really wanted to visually communicate the vibrance and the beauty of Blackness and Black people and Black communities and Black spaces. And so that's reflective in the incredible work of my costume designer, Marcy Rogers, my production designer, Kurt Beach, and the incredible work of my cinematographer, Bobby Bukowski. I was really intentional about framing choices and composition choices spaces and what we see and what we don't see. You know, part of cinematic language is suggesting a world beyond the frame. And so who is in the frame and how are they centered or not centered in the frame is important in terms of whose point of view I chose to focus on, you know, and also using a lot of low angles to communicate, to put people in positions of visual power and strength versus the overhead angles, you know, and I was just really intentional about the way the camera moves through spaces to explore spaces and how long we stay on moments and how long and you know, when I think about Mamie's testimony, you know, staying on her is reflective of the tenseness and the closeness and the emotional anxiety and the interrogation that she's experiencing, and we're just staying with her in that emotional moment in real time, and it just emotionally resonates with you. And so a lot of the directorial decisions I made in terms of the cinematic language was me communicating the emotional moment of those who were on screen. You know, I worked with my amazing composer Abel Korzeniowski to create a score that highlights the emotional subtext of the film, you know, as opposed to underlining what we see, but what is it that they're feeling underneath that? You know, and a classic example, or a good example of that is the scene where Mamie is inspecting Emmett's body. You know, part of that scene is not just the pain of it, but it's the building rage inside of her and frustration and anger that leads to her making that decision. And so I talked with my composer Abel about the music underscoring that as opposed to the sadness of the picture. Let's underscore what is building and bubbling and rising inside of Mamie. So those were all some of the directorial choices that I made when constructing my vision. Jalen, in addition to being a talented actor, he was 14 when we shot the film, and so he had just this natural childlike energy and charisma and charm and playfulness. You know, Emmett was a jokester, and one of the things he wanted to be is a comedian, you know, and he was cracking jokes all the time, and he had swag, and he was a boy. This innocence along with the swag and the charisma and the naivete, and Jalen embodies all of that, you know. And then seeing him with Danielle, it's like they were just so beautiful and loving together. And so I definitely knew when he did his chem test with Danielle, oh, this is our Emmett. It's important. It's a communal experience. It's a communal story. It's a cinematic film that is visually and sonically an experience. It's an emotionally immersive experience that is best had in a theater with other people. You know, part of Mamie's arc in the film is her realizing that this bubble that she was in, this middle-class bubble she was in before her son was taken from her, was needed to be expanded, and it burst when her son was taken, but it made her realize that we are all connected and the concerns of others affects me too. And so it was a very communal kind of a sense of the world that she came to that I think could be an extension of the communal experience one can have on screen. We're all connected.